Betrayed on my birthday, how my son kicked me out, but life taught him a lesson. It was supposed to be a day of celebration, a milestone birthday for me. I had imagined a quiet dinner with my family, surrounded by laughter and warmth, but what unfolded that day was beyond my worst nightmares. For as long as I can remember, I've dedicated my life to my son, Jeremy. After his father passed away when Jeremy was only 10, I worked double shifts, took odd jobs, and even sold some sentimental belongings to ensure he never lacked anything. Jeremy was my pride, my joy, and the reason I kept going, no matter how hard life got. But life has a cruel way of blindsiding you. The birthday incident, I had turned 55 that day. I woke up hopeful even though Jeremy had been distant for the past few months. He had recently married Vanessa, a woman who was beautiful but had an air of entitlement that made me uneasy. I convinced myself that I was just overthinking things and that they'd surely planned something special for my birthday. By late afternoon, there wasn't a word from Jeremy or Vanessa. No calls, no texts, nothing. Still, I decided to make my way to their house to see them. I even stopped by a bakery to pick up a cake, just in case they'd forgotten. When I arrived, Vanessa opened the door, her expression cold and distant. "Oh, you're here," she said, barely concealing her annoyance. Jeremy appeared moments later. To my surprise, he didn't greet me with his usual warmth. Instead, he looked uncomfortable, almost as if he didn't want me there. "What's wrong?" I asked, confused by their behavior. Vanessa sighed dramatically. "Look, Susan, we've been meaning to talk to you about something." "Talk about what?" I asked, growing uneasy. Jeremy glanced at Vanessa before finally speaking. "Mom, we think it's time for you to move out of the house." I blinked, unsure if I'd heard him correctly. "Move out? Jeremy, what are you talking about? I don't live with you." "No," Vanessa interjected. "He means the house you're living in now, the one Jeremy inherited from his father. We've decided to sell it." My heart sank. That house wasn't just bricks and mortar to me. It was the place where I'd raised Jeremy, where we'd built countless memories. It was my sanctuary. "But where will I go?" I asked, my voice trembling. Vanessa shrugged. "I'm sure you'll figure something out. Maybe a retirement home?" Jeremy avoided my gaze, his silence more painful than any words could be. "I'm sorry, Mom. We've already made the arrangements. You need to be out by the end of the month." The final blow came when Vanessa smirked and said, "Oh, and happy birthday, by the way." I left their house that evening, clutching the cake I'd brought, tears streaming down my face. The son I had sacrificed everything for had chosen his wife's greed over his mother's well-being. Starting over the next few weeks were a blur. I had no choice but to leave the house. I found a small room to rent in a shared apartment, using the little savings I had left. It was a far cry from the home I'd built with love, but I had no other option. At first, I wallowed in self-pity. I couldn't understand how Jeremy, my own flesh and blood, could treat me so callously. But as time went on, I realized I needed to pick myself up. I started working again, taking on freelance sewing projects to make ends meet. Slowly but surely, I began to rebuild my life. What hurt the most wasn't the loss of the house, it was the betrayal. Jeremy's actions had shattered the bond I thought we shared. I decided to cut off all contact with him. If he didn't value me, I wouldn't beg for his love. The tables months turned into a year. I had found some semblance of peace in my new life when, out of the blue, Jeremy showed up at my door. He looked disheveled and desperate, a stark contrast to the confident man I had seen last. "Mom, I need your help," he said, his voice trembling. I stared at him, conflicted. A part of me wanted to slam the door in his face, but the mother in me couldn't ignore his pain. "What's wrong, Jeremy?" He explained that Vanessa had left him. She had drained their joint bank account and disappeared, leaving him with a mountain of debt. To make matters worse, he had lost his job and was on the verge of losing the house. "I have nowhere else to go, Mom," he admitted, tears streaming down his face. "Please, can I stay with you?" I took a deep breath, the weight of his words sinking in. Part of me wanted to tell him that he was reaping what he had sown, but another part of me, one that still loved him despite everything, wanted to help. Jeremy, I said, my voice steady, do you have any idea how much you hurt me? You threw me out on my birthday, sold the house I raised you in, and didn't even bother to check if I was okay. He hung his head in shame. I know, Mom. I was wrong. Vanessa, she manipulated me. I see that now. I'm so sorry. His apology felt genuine, but the scars of his betrayal couldn't be erased overnight. I'll help you, Jeremy, I said finally, but you need to understand that trust is earned, not given. It will take time for me to forgive you. Moving forward, Jeremy stayed with me for a few months while he got back on his feet. During that time, we had many long, honest conversations. He admitted that he had allowed Vanessa to influence him because he wanted to make her happy, even at the expense of his own mother. Though it wasn't easy, I eventually forgave him. But I also made it clear that I would no longer tolerate being taken for granted. Jeremy had to prove through his actions that he had changed. In the end, our relationship became stronger than it had ever been. Jeremy learned the hard way that family should always come first, and I learned that sometimes even the people we love the most can hurt us. But with time and effort, wounds can heal. And as for me, I celebrated my next birthday, surrounded by true friends and newfound happiness, knowing that I deserved nothing less. D. On what was supposed to be a joyous milestone birthday, I faced the ultimate betrayal when my son, influenced by his wife, kicked me out of my home. Heartbroken and alone, I struggled to rebuild my life from scratch. But when karma turned the tables, my son returned, desperate and seeking my help. This is a story of love, betrayal, resilience, and the power of forgiveness, where life taught us both lessons we would never forget.